Okay, well, thank you, Chris. Really a terrific day on many fronts, and the level of participation, not only by the people who are on panels, but also from those who attended the meeting, upwards of 10,000 or so, was just incredible. And the diversity of subjects really were just phenomenal. I am looking for clues as to whether or not we'll go first to the questions and then we'll go to our closing remarks, or should we go to the closing remarks? Let me ask my co-chair, Gregg, do you want to start off maybe with some of the questions and answers, and then we'll go to the closing remarks?
Yeah, let's go to the questions, Ravi. And again, thank you to all of you who have spent this day with us and the entirety of our global audience here. We have a chance to share some of these answers with you briefly, and you know you'll be getting the full set of them on the web link that will come after the conference is closed. One of the questions that was asked was about whether or not you had a personal experience with COVID, and it's wonderful to know that 60% of you actually have not yet had such an experience, and I hope that this continues to be true. We are a resilient crowd. 80% of you said that you are keeping calm and carrying on. In terms of working remotely, it's not going to go away anytime soon. 71% of you said you are either equally or more productive working remotely. In terms of your optimism around a vaccine, not so much. 2/3 thought it was going to be at least the end of 2021, but many of you felt much better about our testing system and having that up and running and available in your region. 70% of you thought that was going to happen by the end of this calendar year. In terms of whether or not there's going to be another spike in COVID cases, we're not so optimistic about that. In fact, 80% of us thought that, yes, we will see another spike in COVID cases, so we haven't seen the end of COVID anytime soon. In terms of whether or not we're going to be wearing a mask, half of you thought you're going to be wearing it for at least a year or longer. Actually, we noted that it really was one half of us thought that it was going to take 2 to 4 years for society to return to where it was pre-COVID. And it's important to note that about 1/3 of us said it's never going to return to where it was. And it really begs the question of, is that a better or worse reimagined future? And I'd hope it certainly is the former. In terms of what's going to happen after COVID subsides, it was perfectly split. That about 50% of you thought that it was going to be improved or like it was pre-COVID, but 50% of us thought it was going to be materially diminished. In terms of whether or not we were going to be doing the majority of our patient encounters via telehealth, 30% thought it was actually going to grow from where it is right now, but about half of us thought it was going to reduce by about 10 to 50%. In terms of what we think the government is going to be doing, we thought that the majority of us thought that there would be a modest increase. 56% said a modest increase in the amount of money that we're spending on public health and prevention. And I think, as you heard today, I think many of us here think that that is not going to be adequate. And we also thought, in terms of the impact of COVID-19 and traveling, we felt that the number of patients who are going to be traveling will either decrease moderately or significantly. About 86% said that. And so we're not looking for a boon in patients traveling for care, at least anytime soon. Ravi, I'll turn it over to you to go over some of the additional questions.
Sure. So the next question was, what impact do you think COVID-19 will have on patients desiring to use telemedicine? No surprise, even from our panelists, about 95% felt that it was going to either moderately or significantly increase. The next question was, what about, from a regulatory standpoint, exemptions and rollbacks in healthcare? Are those temporary, or do we expect the exemptions to sort of go back to the way they were, meaning a much more restricted environment? And I think majority, 50-some%, felt they were going to go back to the more restricted environment. The next question, I expect the impact of remote work technologies will result in my employer, my industry, shrinking its real estate commitment. And 45% felt yes, it would shrink by 10 to 25%. But if you look at overall, I think almost 100% felt that that would shrink in that space. Going back to the airline, I expect my airline travel over the next year to be reduced by, and here about 75%, more than 75%, 35% felt that was going to be the case. That is, 35% felt it was going to be more than 75%, but majority felt there was going to be a significant reduction. What about in 2023, presumably several years out, and only 30% felt they would actually get back to where they were pre-COVID, I should say, which is interesting. Will we be relying more on domestic medical supply chains? 55% felt that domestic supply chains will actually increase. 36% nominally grow, so you can argue majority felt certainly that would grow. What about the U.S. pharmaceutical and biotech investment? Overall increase, 76% felt it would increase. What about the investment in infectious diseases, which one can argue has been largely underfunded? And 60% felt it would increase by more than 20%, 31% by 10 to 20%. So over 80, almost 90% felt it was going to increase as a result of this. US GDP in 2021, really split across the board here. Some felt it was not going to grow, others shrink. Really no significant majority. I think 27% felt it would shrink by more than 2%, but not a significant majority. And then finally, the last two questions on the World Forum. On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. The good news here, Chris to his team, 60, 70% felt it was either a 4 or a 5, which is terrific, and 3, 4, or 5, I think, over 95% or so. And then finally, in anticipation of the next World Forum, as was advertised on gene and cell therapy next year in the future, certainly lots of interest in that. In fact, 25% felt that if it was virtual, they would certainly participate. So I do believe the questions will actually be sent out by way of a poll. So we have that as a benchmark, Gregg. Let me then start off by making some final comments, if that's okay. I think it's fair to say first, the folks at Kramer Broadcasting have done a terrific job today in terms of keeping all of us coordinated, making sure the Zooms are going back and forth, making sure that everyone is on cue and on time. Minor glitches along the way to be expected, but that said, overall, really fabulous job to that particular group. Certainly want to thank the group of distinguished panel members for joining us today to share their perspectives and expertise. Certainly an unprecedented time. We're incredibly grateful to the panel members. Gregg?
Let me add my thank you to the team here, the steering committee, Chris Coburn, and the amazing team as part of Mass General Brigham Innovation that put on the forum and really pivoted in an incredible way to bring us the forum here virtually today. I also want to take this moment to thank our sponsors, Meyer, GE Healthcare, Biogen, Boston Scientific, Fujifilm, InterSystems, One Medical, Siemens Healthineers. They've been with us from the beginning, and as we changed our plans, they stuck with us. We look forward to seeing all of you next year, and in particular, we look forward to seeing you hopefully in person, either with masks or without. It will be great to have you as part of the World Medical Innovation Forum once again. Thank all of you for all that you are doing. It is an honor and privilege to help tackle this extraordinary problem with you. We will all learn and get better together.